Today, I am thrilled to have Julie Menanno back because she is an amazing person. And no matter what relationships you have, and guaranteed you have some because you're a person,
Yeah.
what you're going to hear today is going to help, I guarantee it, in some way. So, Julie, let's just start out with what made you decide to start talking about relationships?
Well, first of all, I'm just obsessed with relationships. I have a husband, I have 6 kids, and I kind of went into my parenting journey really reading all the parenting books out there and wanting to get it right. And that led me into going to grad school because I was like, well, none of these books are really getting me there. So I just kind of need to learn how humans work on my own and went to grad school for psychology. Within a couple months, kind of fell in love with the roots of attachment theory and then later attachment theory, and just really dove into mastering this conceptualization of relationships through the lens of attachment theory, which is really, for me, it's been a real game changer. Started working with individuals, ended up with couples, even though that adamantly did not want to do that at the beginning. When I went back to grad school, no interest in couples work, fell in love with couples work, was all in, all couples all the time, went and got training in the way that I work as a therapist with couples, which is basically attachment theory work, and just started experiencing a lot of success with it. Then in 2020, I got onto Instagram kind of randomly, very randomly. Didn't even have my own personal account at that time. And I started reading, and I was like, wait, I have something to offer here. When it comes to the attachment world, there's just a lot of misinformation, a lot of incomplete information. And so I just started making little hand drawings because I had no idea how else to get, visual content out there. And that started to really take off. And then I learned how to do Canva, and that was like a kid in a candy store for me. And it just kind of took off. And I think I had something unique to offer at the time, which is coming from the perspective of someone who actually does this work. And so anyway, that really took off, and then was approached to started writing a book because the followers were asking for a book. So I got the manuscript done, and then an agent contacted me, and that turned into a book deal. And then I wrote the book. The book is called Secure Love. The book is meant to walk couples through the work I do with couples in my practice, self-help version. And then I was like, you know what? I need to complete this circle and bring this work to life. So I started a podcast where I have a real life couple, Melissa and Drew, and I'm doing 20 sessions of couples work with them. And so I've recorded 7, and we're on release of 5, and it's going swimmingly. They are a very typical anxious partner with an avoidant partner, and they're quickly moving into secure attachment. So yeah,
That's awesome.
That was a lot.
Great. It's because you're excited and passionate. And that's what I love about you, is that there's a lot of people that put out content to put out content. But that wasn't how you started. You started by wanting to help, and it turned into you putting out content. But it's a whole different way of
it really
seeing
did
things. And I think that's why so many people out there love you. And like I said last time, I mean, every post of yours on Instagram, I feel like could be a book. I mean, you have a way of just condensing it. But for people who are listening, who are thinking, what the heck is this attachment thing that I keep hearing about? What is that?
Well, it's interesting because it's such a simple theory that I have a really hard time explaining. Every podcast, every interview, I explain it in a different way, but I've kind of tried to narrow it down to this. Like we're wired as humans to need to seek safety and closeness and comfort with our tribe, basically, because that's what keeps us safe. We can't, if thrown into the forest, we're not going to do well eating and having shelter on our own. And so we have, in order to be wired to stay safe and connected, we obviously need to experience fear when we're not safe and connected, which motivates us to regain that sense of connection. Just like when you're hungry, you have to experience the discomfort of hunger, or else you're not going to eat. And so what happens is people who grow up in environments where the emotional safety isn't super healthy, emotional safety is intrinsically connected to physical safety. And I won't go into why, but it is. And so if you grow up in an environment with not a lot of emotional support or emotional safety, you learn to take on this like this kind of chronic anxiety, which is your body's way of saying, hey, I need to feel safe. I need to feel safe. And until that anxiety is fixed with safety in your relationships, it's probably not going to go on away on its own. And so what happens is we have this sense of anxiety, and then some people act out on that anxiety. They're panicky. They're constantly trying to reach for connection, close the distance, protest when things don't go their way. And they do this in a way that actually ends up pushing people away. And then we have another group of people who kind of just stuff it down. Let's just pretend it's not there to begin with. And they find themselves moving away from relationships, which then makes them have all sorts of substance, any number of, things that people do when they feel kind of empty and disconnected inside. And so then we have a disorganized attachment, which is kind of a mixture of both with some trauma added in. And then we have secure attachment, which are the folks who did grow up in the emotionally safe environments, and they just have a way of maintaining their connections with their loved ones and staying safe. And so anyway, that's basically attachment theory in a nutshell. My job is to improve these relationships so people aren't feeling angsty and they can feel good and close and connected and secure and all the good stuff that comes from that.
And so the good news is that if you don't feel secure and you don't have healthy
Mhm.
relationships, there is light at the end of this tunnel.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I mean,
But
you'll see Melissa and Drew, the couple I'm working with, I mean, 5 sessions in, they're already getting that sense of safety with each other.
that is so amazing. So that's
Yeah.
really good. And then you talked about different kinds of attachment. So there's
Mhm.
anxious, and can you just briefly explain that too? So if
Mhm.
people watching can know.
Yeah, so anxious attachment, very aware of relationship angst, very aware of the need to connect. Again, they're going to handle that the anxiousness they feel over the disconnection with protest. They're really in touch with anger, angry responses, escalation, just anything they can do to close the distance, be heard, be seen, fighting for validation, which is invalidation is a huge part of disconnection. And again, they're not able to get their needs met. A lot of the way they're trying to get their needs met ends up pushing others away. And the thing is that they all also legitimately don't have their needs met. So it's not like anyone's bad or good here. It's just a normal reaction to people who really genuinely are not getting their needs met. And as children, we have no fault for that. But then as adults, we definitely play a role in not getting our needs met. And then we have the avoidant attachment that they just stuff it down. Their way of dealing with relationship anxiety and angst is don't feel it and move away from situations that might trigger it. So they're always just sort of trying to keep things stable. And then these two come together. I mean, 99% of the couples I treat are an anxious avoidant dynamic. So you have one partner who's fighting for all the connection, and you have another partner who's just fighting to keep things stable and not fight and not go to these escalated places. And I just need to come in and balance that out. So both of them are fighting for the relationship, but in a regulated, equal way. And both of them are committed to not going into fights and escalation.
It sounds like so many relationships that I know of. Yeah. So
Yeah, I mean, yeah,
that
you
adds
can
up.
kind of just look around, like any relationship with distress is going to have this dynamic to some degree, whether they started out with it or they kind of subconsciously started to manage the distress by falling into this. It's a way of creating emotional balance.
That's interesting. Yeah, and so something that because people really need help, right? If this is all they know, they need to get some kind of help to point them in the right direction. And
Mhm.
when we talked last time, you were saying it is nigh impossible to find a really good therapist. And as
Mhm.
someone who throughout my life has tried,
Mhm.
I can second that.
Mhm.
did find someone that is decent in our area,
Mhm.
and which is, I mean, 50 years of looking, right? Um,
Yeah.
but that's the thing. And so if someone's thinking, wait a minute, we I'm in this relationship and you're
Mhm.
saying there's help. I
Mhm.
know that there is a way they can actually meet with you or someone that
Mhm.
works with you. Can you talk about that? Because I don't wanna wait to the
Yeah,
end to talk about that because I
sure.
think it's important.
Yeah, it is very, very hard. And, I'll tell you why it's hard. I've been doing this for 14 years. I've been practicing this type of work, which is called EFT, emotionally focused therapy for couples. I have the best supervisor out there who teaches me everything I know. When I say supervisor, I don't mean I work for him. He is a senior member of has been doing this type of work for 25, 30 years instead of 14. And the other day, I got the greatest compliment from him ever, which is I am an 8 out of 10 as far as EFT therapist goes. I have put everything I have into learning this modality, literally everything, studying, practicing, reading, going to trainings all over the country. And I'm still an 8 out of 10. And most of us are 5 or less out of 10. So that shows you how difficult this is. It's a simple modality to learn. It's an impossible one to master. And so the reality is that it's really difficult. It's really difficult work. And so now it's difficult work to really get super good at, on top of the fact that there aren't a ton of couples therapists out there to begin with. Nobody wants to work with couples. It's incredibly difficult. It can be demoralizing. You're going into the fire. It can be overwhelming. For those of us who love it, that's all like a kind of a that's that the challenge of it is what we love. And so I do have a staff that is, personally trained by me, and I can vouch for them.
And they can work with you online too. So this is not an
Oh, yeah.
insurance thing where you're on a different state line. This is more
No, no,
considered
it's
like a coaching kind of thing,
we
right?
don't take insurance. We don't treat diagnosable conditions. They're all licensed therapists, but they operate as coaches because that allows us to treat people across state lines. If we're working with a therapy license, you can only treat someone in the state that you're licensed in, but they're not actually working as therapists. They're working as coaches because they're doing relationship communication work. They're not treating diagnosable conditions. We're not treating depression or anxiety or bipolar. We've been doing the EFT folks have been doing attachment work for 3 decades. I mean, that's when Sue Johnson created this. But that hasn't been, at first it was really looked down on in the couples world. And more people are realizing that this attachment and somatic work, just in the field of therapy at all, is becoming like what's been missing. Like, it's the missing piece. I mean, the mental health world has failed, to be honest with you. I mean, if you look at NIH studies and all kinds of stuff, it's like, wow, this has really failed. And I believe it's because we've missed these two major pieces, which is attachment relational work and somatic work. And so I think there's access to better help on social media. People who are more savvy about these new lenses. But with that said, on the other side of that, you have people who, what happens is if you start having dysfunctional families, and it just, keeps growing exponentially.
And so a question, because you're talking about the EFT. Last time we had talked about cognitive behavioral therapy and
Mhm.
how that is not the best, but it seems to be what a lot of people are pushing. And it's trying to teach you to stop feeling what you're feeling, and
Mhm.
we're hitting walls with that. Can you talk
Yeah,
a little bit about the difference between the 2
sure.
modalities?
A huge difference. Cognitive behavioral, it's, first of all, I'm not an expert in CBT. I know a lot of people, know some little bit about CBT, and then there's some people who are just all in and that's all they do. So if I misrepresent CBT, I apologize in advance. But it's just really staying in your head, thinking rationally, examining your thoughts, looking at your catastrophized fears, and it's very heady and intellectual. And that's what I mean by the mental health field has failed, because they've been missing these two huge pieces, which is attachment work, which is more emotional, but not emotional in a kind of new way. Somatic work is very emotional in the best sense of the word, because you're actually getting to the emotions in the body. I don't feel that I've seen a lot of people have a ton of success with CBT. It's just like, you go to therapy, yes, you're getting better. There's things that have gotten better, but you're still not really where you want to be. And so I have heard from people who say, yeah, CBT really helped me, but it didn't really get me completely where I want to be. And, there's a lot of controversy around it too, because back in the, I don't know, 90s, 2000s, when insurance companies were starting to pay for therapy, they were funding all the CBT studies. And so what they were finding is that, people would heal after 8 sessions of CBT therapy. And so now that's all they're paying for. So it was like convenient for them to back CBT. They created the studies to begin with. So again, that's just a piece of it. I don't want to put it in, speak broadly. I think there's a lot to be said for it, but I don't think it's a complete therapy at all. And I mean, I do EFT, that this attachment work that I do with the EFT scaffolding on it. I bring everything in. I do somatic work with my clients. I do parts work. I do CBT work. But it's all in the context of the big picture. And I think CBT is just a piece of that. And I don't think just emotional work alone is enough either. I think you need to bring a lot of different elements together.
A lot of different things have a place, right?
Yes, absolutely.
It's just when we take them completely, that's where it can get difficult, right? Any one thing just taken by itself because there isn't one size fits all, is there, for every person?
No, I think we all have different, layers to our being, and we need to work on all of those different layers. And so, and also all of these different modalities have a lens through which to view humanity, and there's truth to all of it. I think attachment is the most complete.
Yeah, it does. It
Yeah.
makes so much sense. So
Yeah.
I have a question. Speaking of, things one size fits all, or, whatever. One of the hot buttons or hot words that's been all over the place right now is narcissism.
Yeah. I
feel
knew
like
you were going to say that. I didn't even,
I feel like it's overused for a lot of people that aren't actually narcissists. But I asked people to give me questions before today. And one of them was, if you're in a relationship with an actual, like a narcissist, and is there hope for that if they don't see themselves as a narcissist, or should you run? That was the question. I know that's you wouldn't say run, but
I mean, if someone is an actual true diagnosable DSM narcissist, definitely run. I mean, no, there is, the saddest thing about narcissism is these people, they're not bad. It's just that their narcissism is such a thick, ingrained defense mechanism, and it gets in the way of them able to see their own parts of problems. So it's like, if someone truly is a narcissist, it's really difficult to break through that. And I don't think that they're capable of being in healthy relationships. It's an actual nightmare to be in a relationship with someone who is a full-blown narcissist. But I also think that there are a lot of people that are being misdiagnosed as narcissists. And I also think that there's probably more narcissism in our culture than ever. So all of it has truth to it, but I would be very, very careful about diagnosing a partner with narcissism, because a lot of the time that isn't the most accurate. That isn't the best way to explain it.
Right. And I feel like it's kind of like the word triggered, right? Certain people are very triggered by actual huge things, but then it's a word that people use for little things. So I think words are important. Don't you think? I feel like
I do. Yeah. And I
would
and I always want to, if someone gives me a word, especially when I'm working with them, I'm just going to try. I really need to understand, what do you mean by that word? Like, help me understand, for you, what does triggered actually mean? What does narcissism mean for you? Why is it, what are the good reasons that you're explaining your partner as narcissist? Right? How does that help you? And then once you kind of dive into that and really help people put words to it and understand them and be heard, sometimes that whole lens of narcissism will just dissolve right in front of your eyes.
all right. Now, do you use this is a silly question. What you've learned, obviously you use it with your family and your kids and in those relationships. Do you have any
Absolutely.
advice for parents? I would say specifically of teenagers because that's where people
Mhm,
tend to run into a
mhm,
wall of some maybe ideas that they could
mhm.
take away from here of how to deal better with their
Oh,
family.
yeah. I mean, honestly, like, I think I went into this more to help my kids than my own relationship. Absolutely, it has benefited my relationship, but for me, my personal journey has been more around my relationship with my kids, whereas my professional journey has been more around helping couples. But it has profoundly impacted my relationship with my kids, and I'm kind of the opposite of a lot of people. I did not like. Let me say this. I miss the younger age, and there were upsides to it, and I would love to go back and, just see my kids at those little ages, but I didn't love being a mom of 10 and under. Just the conversations, it was hard to get stimulated. Teenagers, I love them. I love, my youngest is 13, my oldest is 23. I'm in literal heaven right now. And I have 5 daughters, and a son. And so it's like lots of hormones. So I have really good reasons to be struggling. I don't consider myself struggling with this age group. And it's because I decided at some point, I want to say maybe 5, 6 years ago, something clicked in me. And I was like, you know what? I'm not going to try to control my kids anymore. I'm not going to fight with them over their room. I'm not going to fight with them over grades. I'm just going to love them and do my best to be a support system for them and connect with them, and let the relationship establish me as a guide, instead of establishing myself as kind of the queen of the home that has to dole out all these consequences if you're room. And it just shifted everything. It just really shifted everything. I think if, you read Gabor Mate's work around parenting, it would be very similar to that. And that I found Gabor Mate after I'd already put all this stuff into practice kind of on my own. And, my kids, once I kind of shifted out of that, what I have seen is they come to me for guidance. They have taken ownership of their education and their physical health. Anything that they're doing that is healthy and good, they've taken ownership for, because they feel emotionally safe, honestly. And I mean, when you have an emotionally safe environment, I think just people will grow on their own for the most part.
That is, and that's something that parents have such a hard time, I feel like, letting go of that
Yeah.
ultimate control over everything, right?
Yeah.
But,
It's
when your
there's
kids are oh, sorry, go ahead.
well, I just want to say there's a point at which you let go, and it's like you kind of let go, you kind of let go, you kind of let go. And then for me there was this point, and it was like jumping off the cliff. And I was like, I am not doing this anymore. I am not fighting with my children anymore.
I love that.
And so
That's great, and I appreciate you sharing, that everything isn't perfect because
no,
people
no,
look at you and, the Instagram and the book and everything and think, "Oh, I bet her life is just perfect, and how would she relate?" But
no, not at all. But it's really good, and it's because I've built that.
and that
Not
gives hope,
perfect.
and
Yes.
I think that's
Yeah.
amazing. How do you manage the demands of parenting and doing all
Mhm.
the things that you're doing with other people?
Well, the phrase is "it takes a village," and pretty early on, I mean, we don't have a ton of extended family. My husband's mom was tragically killed, and whenever my twins were born, and then we moved here to Montana where we have no support, no family support. So I figured out early on it takes a village. I don't have a village, so I'm going to buy a village. And that's what I did. And I made it happen because I just knew I cannot do this on my own. I cannot do it. Luckily, I had the privilege of figuring out a way to make that happen. And that is how I do it. I'm not superwoman. I don't think it's healthy to have that many kids and be trying to do it on your own. I think that extended family situations are ideal. And so I had to scrape together and figure out what would work. And so I have the ability now to have kind of outsource all the little things and just be there as the emotional support.
That's incredible. Yeah, and one of the
Yeah.
things that we outsource is the cleaning, and that seems to have really helped take the pressure off,
Mhm.
you
Oh,
know?
yeah. Oh, yeah.
The kids' chores are
Oh,
less,
yeah.
and my
Yeah.
stress is less, and every other
Yeah.
week someone does all the big things, and
Totally.
it's
Yeah.
it's so if people can afford it, would you recommend
I
having
say here's what I say. I say don't pay for college if I'm sorry, do pay for college and do help college, but if you have to choose between their needs being taken care of in younger childhood and college, your money is gonna be better spent on help when they're young. If you I believe that,
Oh, I
truly.
wholeheartedly agree. Yeah,
Yeah.
'cause, I've got
And
my 5 older kids too, yeah, and
mhm,
they we homeschooled them, and we helped
mhm.
them get scholarships, but we have 7 kids, you have 6,
Yep.
and our thing was, "You are going to put yourself through college because,
Yeah.
you're gonna put in everything
Yeah.
we can, though, until you're 18, and we're gonna help you,
Right.
but then because we can't take out the loans for 7 people,
No, no.
not
And
gonna."
you know what? That's basically what we're doing. Now that I've had more resource, I've been able to help my older 2 that are in college a little bit more, but yeah, for many, many years, it was like, you gotta do this, you know?
But I think that's great advice, and
Mm.
no one gives that advice, and I think people need to hear. Your kids are with you now, and they're little, and our whole
Mhm.
cultural I can't wait till they're 18 and they get out. Even commercials
Yeah.
about school starting and parents are singing and dancing, and I can't wait to get them out. And what does that do to a child's psyche when they hear their parents saying they can't wait for them to be gone?
I mean, I think that's sad. I mean, I think there I don't know, like, I always like to look at both sides. I mean, I think it's good to celebrate them moving on and things, but, like, my twins who are and you can probably relate to this, my twins who are, just turned 16. So, at least in the past, few years, that my older ones were kinda moving on, I had the twins and the little one who's 13, they were home. So 3 kids at home, there's a lot of activity. Well, the twins start driving and now they drive the 13-year-old. And so there are long stretches where no one's here and I don't like it at all. Like I feel it feels really empty to me. So, no, I don't think it's healthy to tell your kids I can't wait until you go away.
Yeah, I
Like
mean, it's healthy to say, "Good luck and with college, and I'll support you," but the whole,
Mhm.
yeah, my dad made a comment about something like that and I still remember,
Oh, yeah.
those things, they stick with you a little
You know
bit.
what? It's interesting that you say that because I don't think I've ever thought about that or had that question asked before, and I do remember my own parents saying little things like that, and it hurt.
Yeah, we were having a party, and my dad I was there, I was right next to him, and he said he wanted to bury me in the backyard till I was 21 and then dig me up, and I was
Oh,
like and it was a
god.
joke, but
Yeah.
it didn't feel good, you know?
No. No.
And so I think because it's so prevalent, that parents do they just assume that that's how everybody talks, and they do it, and I think it's just good to
Yeah.
hear, maybe you don't wanna do that, and let them
Mm,
feel treasured. I think,
totally.
we were talking about the shower thoughts I do, and one of them was children feel so much better when they feel valued and not expensive. They feel
Oh, yeah.
and
Oh, yeah.
I think we've just kind of lost sight that
Oh,
children
yeah.
are humans.
I know, and they wanna they you I feel like you wanna let them know they're delightful. You want to be around them, you know? I have never been one to say, "I want you to go see go out into the world and, like, live wherever you want. And I'm like, no, I think there's something to be said for like getting out and seeing the world, but you're going to have a better life if you're close to us with your families and stuff growing up. So, which I think is a little different from the cultural narrative.
Yeah, I think so. But, our culture is
Mm.
one of the only ones where we're like, "Go away and get out and move anywhere."
So true.
Most cultures,
Yeah.
they even live together, and
Yeah.
so
Yeah.
there's a beauty in which is attachment, right? And
It
knowing
is.
that
Yeah.
forever your family wants you, and that's just a healthy thing.
And it is
So
understandable when people have negative experiences. It only makes sense that they want, to create that separation. So I'm wanting to have my kids stay with me because they want to be with me.
exactly. Now, on
Yeah,
the flip side of that, though, it is healthy to take time for ourselves.
absolutely. Yes. And I do a lot of that.
'Cause we
I
do
wouldn't say a lot of it, but enough of it. Yeah, for sure.
so that you can just recharge and just have enough.
Yes.
Yeah,
Yeah. I walk every day and I like going by myself and
yeah.
definitely. Yeah.
So before we go, are there any upcoming projects, books, or events that you'd like to share?
Yeah, I mean, my book, Secure Love by me, Julie Menanno, I think it's really can be really helpful. It's a reframe probably of the narrative around relationships. I mean, I'm not fighting for enmeshment. It sounds like that by some of the things that I say, especially on here with my kids, but it's not enmeshment at all. It's actually very healthy individuation, but it definitely comes from the perspective of needing each other emotionally, needing emotional support instead of this kind of, you know, um, independent way of being that we've the to me the cultural narrative for the past, I don't know, 20, 30 years since kind of the 90s has been separate, 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 and I'm trying to kind of bring people back into that emotional support zone. And so it's pretty structured because I do a structured type of therapy. And then my podcast is my way of saying, hey, I'm going to not just write about this work, right? You can write about it all day long. Like I'm going to do it in front of your eyes, although it's actually in front of your ears because it's a podcast. But I want you to see I'm not just talking here. This work actually works. And here's what it looks like. And so if you kind of have the book as a guide and the podcast, and then I offer with the podcast free PDF homework assignments on my website, thesecurerelationship.com, for those who want to do their own work along with the podcast.
I
And
love
then
that.
yeah, I like it too. I like being able to give that other resource to just drive the work home.
Yeah,
And
and
then the
then
securerelationship.com is where you can also find my staff.
which is absolutely phenomenal. Well, thank you
Yeah,
so much for joining me again and sharing all these incredible things. And there will be a link in the description and in the show notes and in all the things so that people can reach out to
perfect.
and
Yeah.
get everything. And I just have to say one more time, in Instagram, if you go to her Instagram, every post is just honestly brilliant, which is how we found you. My daughter found you, and she
Oh,
said, "Oh, mom, you've
that's
got
that's
to read these
touching.
things because we're all trying to get healthy because we
Yeah,
were not raised in a healthy
totally.
situation."
Yeah.
So
Well,
yeah,
yeah, that means a lot. Thank you.
so
It
thank
really does.
you,
I appreciate that.
and I
I
appreciate.
do work at it. So
Amazing. Well,
yeah,
thank you again for joining us, and have a
you're
great day.
welcome. Okay, you too.